Hi, it's Jason. Now I'm going to read Chapter 7 of Floki's Army and Chapter 8. Chapter 7, Claiborne Animal Shelter. Claiborne Animal Shelter brought in over 300 dogs a month. They did see dogs like this from time to time, but it wasn't common. Most of the dogs that came through their doors were some sort of hound dog. They were common to the area. If they came across a Shih Tzu or similar breed, they could assume that they came from a puppy mill, especially when they were in this condition. A decision had to be made whether or not this little dog could be saved. Did he have any contagious disease that might infect the other dogs at the facility? Was he able to recover from his current condition? The dogs they had seen in the past, in this condition, rarely survived. The mere act of giving them too much food and water could kill them. It was difficult to get a good look at him because of his long matted fur. He would have to be isolated from the other dogs and shaved down from head to tail. Then the vet tech that volunteered her time to the shelter would have to look him over thoroughly. He couldn't just be shaved down because he had dried poop and blood in his fur. It was about 6 inches long in some spots. Large shears had to be used at first until the bulk of his coat could be removed and the trimmers could actually go through his fur. He then went directly to the vet tech. She happened to be working that day and decided to move him to the front of the line because of his condition. Time may not be on his side. Shaving him down revealed a lot that wasn't visible before. He was intact, which also supported the idea that he was a breeder in a mill. He had 2 5-inch scars down the middle of his back, covering about 3/4 of his body length. His eyes were now visible too. They either had scars or cataracts, or both. It appeared that he was blind or near blind. He was very much underweight, and his limbs were especially thin, even for a small dog. He could only stand for a few moments before he had to sit or lost his balance and fell. His physical condition was not great, but what stood out most during his examination is how he welcomed human touch. He seemed to crave the gentle touches from the staff and had no problem being held or carried. The vet tech made special note of this because it was the last thing that she expected from a dog that had been so abused. His attitude was possibly his only hope. It was difficult to not like this little guy, but there was no sense in thinking any further until all his test results were in. As it turned out, he did not have any contagious diseases, no heartworm, and in fact, he didn't even have fleas. His heart had a strong, healthy beat, and his good attitude seemed to improve by the day. He passed all of his tests and would not be put to sleep. This little boy wanted to live. Now, to see if there was anyone out there that would be interested in giving him a home. The first step that the shelter takes when trying to find a home for a dog was to give it a name. It was just more appealing to people than using a number. It made the dog a dog, not a thing. The name they gave this little fighter was Colonel. They knew that it would most likely be temporary, but a dog like this had never had a name before. Now he was someone. Finding Colonel a home was going to be a challenge for several reasons. First of all, Shih Tzus were not popular in the area. Most of the dogs that came through the shelter were some kind of hound dog or herding dog. Secondly, he wasn't all that attractive at this point in time. And thirdly, he was kind of a wild card when it came to his health. Anyone could look at him and see a potential for medical costs. No one could even guarantee that he would live another week. He was going to need a lot of luck. If he could just meet the right people, he could easily sell himself. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. 4 paws for you forever. Sherry and John Casey run a shelter in Illinois. It's southwest of Chicago in a town called West Chicago. They were getting older now, so they specialized in finding homes for younger, smaller dogs. They were easier for them to handle, and most people were looking to adopt younger dogs. It was a formula that worked very well for them. They were able to find homes for many dogs, considering that they were just a small operation based out of their home. They were very strict about the dogs they took in, and even more strict about who could adopt them. Sticking with this formula ensured that they could help dogs find the right families. It was well thought out. Somewhere along the line, they made a connection with Claiborne Animal Shelter. They took in a minimum of 300 dogs per month, and they were quite overwhelmed. This connection was a perfect fit for both shelters. Claiborne Animal Shelter had so many dogs that they could easily accommodate Four Paws For You Forever requests for younger and smaller dogs. Any help finding good homes for their dogs was welcome. Every 3 to 4 weeks, the Caseys would call Claiborne Animal Shelter and tell them how many dogs they would like. They typically kept about 25. After finding homes for the dogs, they would replenish the supply. Claiborne Shelter knew that the Caseys were looking for and would give a description of the dogs they thought would be right. On this occasion, the manager at Claiborne Shelter said, "We have one more that maybe you would be interested in." "Oh yeah?" said Sherry Casey. "What you got?" "Well, we have a 110-year-old Shih Tzu here." "What?" asked Sherry. "Well, we have this little guy here. He's old and he's been abused. He can't see well, he has big scars on his body, but he loves to be held and just melts your heart. Put him in the van when it gets there," Sherry said. "We'll find him a home." When the Four Paws For You van showed up at Claiborne Shelter for its usual pickup, they took 5 cute young dogs and 1 beat-up old guy. It was a several-hour drive back to West Chicago, Illinois. None of the dogs were likely to have spent much time in a car or van, so they each reacted in their own way. Some were barking and some were nervous. The little guy was cool as a cucumber. He just fell asleep. By the look of him, he'd seen worse. As the van pulled into the drive to Four Paws For You, all the dogs seemed to know that they had reached their destination. A feeling of hope was in the air. Each dog was taken from its crate and leash. Then were all led into the fenced-in area behind the rescue in order to take care of business. That was just not necessary for obvious reasons, but it was also the first step in letting these dogs get comfortable with their new surroundings and to add their own smells to the backyard for familiarity. No matter what their background was, they had all lost their original homes, been taken to a shelter, and then put in a van and driven several hours to a rescue. Even the calmest of dogs would be a little uneasy. As all this was taking place, John Casey opened the smallest cage and gently picked up the little old guy, currently named Colonel. He had to be given a name in order to fill out the paperwork necessary in order to cross state lines. John carried him into the backyard to do his business. When he put the little guy down, he fell to the ground. John had no idea he would be so weak. The average rescue is much younger and stronger. John picked the little guy up and set him on his feet, holding him until the little guy steadied himself. He was then able to maintain a standing position and squatted to pee. John made mental notes of everything he noticed. It didn't appear that this dog could see at all, or if he could, it was very little. Caring for this dog would require a little different approach than the others. John told his wife, Sherry, that she could make the volunteers aware. They had very loyal volunteers who were very good for caring for the dogs. This little guy was going to need special care. Because he was blind and so weak, little Colonel wasn't going to be able to play with the other dogs. He would just get trampled in all the excitement. He didn't seem to care about socializing anyway. It seemed just staying alive was all he could focus on right now. He did have an appetite which seemed like a good sign. But even with all the Casey's years of experience with dogs, they had no idea if this little guy would survive. All they could do was the best they could do. It was quite possible that little Colonel would spend whatever time he had left at their rescue. It still had to be better than anything he had experienced before. It was hard enough to find the right people to adopt their young, healthy dogs. This little guy was going to need a miracle. The Caseys decided to post his picture online just like they did any other dog. They would include a narrative that would hopefully describe him in a way that might reach the right person's heart. Adoption info. Okay, I am a 10-year-old, skinny, some big scars on my back. I cannot see too well, but I have a very kind heart, and I love when I am held. I have not had a very good life, but I hear that there are some humans that are nice and have love for animals. I would really like the opportunity to meet someone and maybe even go home with them. Just maybe there was someone for me. If you would like to come and meet me, please fill out the application on the website www.puppiesthatneedlove.com under How to Adopt. Thank you for the look. A picture was added. Now all they could do was hope. End of chapter 8. Thank you.